So now we're going to talk about a different conversation here. The impact of the coronavirus, economically speaking. Our guest in studio, Sami Karanja, CEO, Small Scale Traders Association. Thank you so much for making time. And Kenneth Okwaro, Executive Director, ASIPIS. ASIPIS is Africa's Center for People, Institutions and Society. They'll be talking to us about how that has affected the businesses, yeah? And Faisal has some numbers as well.
Yes, just before we actually jump into that conversation, we'll just look at the impact of the coronavirus so far. So 76,000 people have so far been infected by the virus in 27 countries, which had originated in Wuhan, China. 2,200 people have unfortunately died from the infectious virus. And what we expect from the International Air Transport Association is a loss of about 2.93 trillion shillings. This alone is in passenger numbers reducing in terms of air travel. You remember that Kenya Airways had actually stopped operations towards China, and this only is not solely from Kenya Airways. Other international aviators have done that as well, and that is the number that is expected to actually reduce by come next year when the actual tabulation starts. Some of the main areas that will be affected include transport groups, hospitality chains for obvious reasons. Not so many people will be traveling in and out of China. Airlines, we've actually hinted that they'll be losing about 2.9 trillion shillings. Luxury goods makers in China have actually taken the biggest hit. And also retailers. We'll speak more to this when we engage Sami on what Kenya is actually going through when it comes to retail trade, because most of our already manufactured goods come from China. Now, one of the biggest vehicle manufacturers out of the UK, Jaguar Land Rover, has warned that from next week, they could actually halt production because most of their parts come from China. And also Apple have said that there could be delays of between 1 to 2 weeks when it comes to actually getting the iPhone that you ordered. So Trevor, I think you'll continue using your Kabambe for a bit longer because it will take 2 to 3 weeks to actually get the iPhone that you ordered.
So the Jaguar I ordered for, I'll have to wait a little bit longer? Sami, let's start with you, Sami. Here's the thing, ports in China, some of them have faced closure. It's also bringing issues with oil, and I don't want to get into that, but it's also affecting our own imports here in Nairobi, in Mombasa to be specific. What are small traders saying on the ground?
We do not have goods to sell because we get goods in China, and the goods are from the, China is a manufacturing hub of almost all of the countries in the world. And so what's happening with our traders is that we get goods in China from the manufacturers, and some of us even get goods from the brokers. But now we don't have any goods which are coming to the country. Why? Because the brokers cannot be able to access to the manufacturing hubs, because it's a total lockdown in terms of manufacturing because of the virus. And so we don't have goods. We are actually now eating into our stock. And it's just a matter of time before now we start getting goods becoming very expensive. And actually even the pricings have actually gone up because of the scarcity of some of the commodities. And when you look at now even venturing into other markets, let's say for example India, you saw the US president going to India because that's another front now people are looking at, because you do not know the outcome of the virus and how long it's going to be, but because we can't be held hostage by the virus in China, so we have to look for other markets.
But so when you see, sorry.
You see, US you can see US running to India. Here's the thing. Doesn't this not provide an opportunity for small traders in Kenya to engage Uganda, Rwanda more and stop having to solely depend on China? Isn't this not an opportunity for us?
It is. We have had issues as Africa in terms of patronizing our goods ourselves, and we have had that issue for a long time. And it's a high time now we start looking at the local manufacturers and also even regional manufacturers, so that we can be able to open up other countries and we can be able to get goods from other countries. But now, having said need that. We should also have the price regulations from other countries, because they can take advantage of that. When you look at Buy Kenya, Build Kenya, you find that some of the goods that you are buying here in Kenya are more expensive than the goods you are getting in China. And the reason why people buy goods from China is because of the pricings. So the manufacturing cost of Kenya, it becomes becomes highly expensive, and that's why people opt even to buy goods from China rather than Kenya, even in terms of garments, even in terms of mobile phones. Rwanda has had an assembly of mobile phones and tablets and computers,
right?
But it's also expensive to get such gadgets from Rwanda. So let's look at the production cost in the region and also in Africa. From there, now we can be able to patronize our own continent. If we do that, we actually get, number one, we are going to have an easier way of trading because of time frames that we usually get, because me getting goods in Rwanda is easier than me going to China and getting goods, the same goods there. So we should think critically concerning that.
Ken, what do you think is the issue here? Should we allow the planes? From the front page of the Standard, you can see 239 passengers came in from China yesterday. Are you encouraged by that? Is this a light at the end of the tunnel, so to speak? Because some says here they have nothing to sell.
Well, you can look at it in two ways. One, right now still, if you are going to test people for this virus, where do you do it? We are still sending things to South Africa, right? Yeah. So looking at it from the perspective of the capacity to actually ascertain for real that these people are not a health risk when they come into Kenya, there are questions. But we're also looking at it from the other perspective, that what is the impact it's having on our economy? What can it do if we make particular safeguards so that we can give a boost to what my friend is talking about, so that people can begin to think that it's not that a big risk if there are safeguards that are taken, if this virus is contained. So for me, well, it's the role of government, but they need to educate the public as to what are the mechanisms that are put in place. For example, this laissez-faire, they have told people to quarantine themselves. I doubt in many of the countries across the world you'll hear that, because people take it very seriously, especially owing to the fact that we don't have very good facilities and we don't have good capabilities to contain it. So therefore, we were supposed to be very strict in terms of ascertaining that how are they coming in, and where are we checking them to be sure that they are not going to, impact the public health in the country.
But how do you balance that with vis-a-vis the economic impact that we have now?
In my view, if you asked me, if government is sure, using the mechanisms that we have, that they don't pose a risk, I still think the only thing we needed to have done is to tighten it a bit. Perhaps government should have taken the responsibility of quarantining these people until they're sure.
Just to engage you a bit, Kenneth, these are some of the industries that are going to be affected. Transport groups, hospitality chains, airlines, luxury good makers and retailers. Should we expect another global recession?
Wow.
Okay. If you look at most of the analysis that have been done by the major global analytical firms, they give three scenarios. A baseline scenario, then they give a scenario that is optimistic, and they give a pessimistic one. So far, what we are seeing are still the immediate effects of the virus, like travel bans and disruptions of supply chains, like you're talking about iPhones not going to be there in the next 2 weeks, or Jaguars not going to be available in the next 2 weeks. Those are still the immediate implications. But when we get to the point where we fail to contain the virus, like right now, I think it's only South America where we haven't seen a case. Italy has just seen 219 cases, meaning we are failing globally. The World Health Organization and the whole framework globally for containing the virus has not succeeded this far.
Yes, allow us to stay on your case a little bit. Do you see this? Transport groups, hospitality chains, airlines. Let's stick to airlines just a little bit, all right? So 10,000 is the number of flights that have been cancelled since the outbreak till to January 31st. To January 31st, right? Last week, Kenya acting CEO of KQ, Mr. Allen, said that within a month alone, because this is last week, so I'm guessing the month of Feb, within a month alone, they have lost $8 million in revenue. That's close to 800 million Kenyan shillings, right? You look at how the government took so long to decide whether Nairobi to Beijing flights should still continue, where you found first world countries didn't even hesitate to take care of their own citizens by banning cancellation of flights. And we understand the sort of the political games that are going on. What's your advice? How is it that Kenya then should sort of balance the politics games that we have with China because of the relationship we have, but also taking care and putting your citizens first and foremost?
But look at our government. It's in almost everything that always happens where we have got to relate with another country that's a little bit more powerful than us. Most of the time, even the example of China, do you remember the case of the toxins that were in fish that we needed to, wanted to import to Kenya? It was tested. Many people have said that there were problems with that fish. But the geopolitical and bilateral relations between our country and China made it that in the end of the day, government allowed that fish, and we are still eating that fish. So that would still be the same thing that's happening right now. As much as there are risks that you could far much surpass the revenues we get from KQ if we find that this virus gets into our country and then we have the public health implications and the costs, it will be far much higher than whatever revenues we are going to lose over this 1 month or 2 months from KQ. So again, balancing the interests of the country and the immediate or short-term perhaps pinches that we might face, I think we still have a problem with that when it comes to the government.
Now, maybe to bring you in, Sami, a bit, not to be a pessimist, but doesn't this provide an opportunity for local industries? I know that we talk about locally manufactured goods being a bit more expensive, but doesn't this open up a window for local manufacturers to tap into the market that maybe China is now lacking in?
It does. We have the costing of importation as per 2017 Kenya National Bureau of Statistics says that we imported about 390 billion worth of goods, and that's a huge market share. But the issue that we have, as much as I want to be very optimistic with what's happening, is that the costing of production in Kenya is too high. Number one is because of electricity. How power is very expensive, and power being very expensive, when you look at the marketing processes and even getting some of these basic things that you're supposed to get in terms of licensing and approvals from NEVA, from KEBS and the rest, if we are able to expedite on some of these processes and be able to facilitate the local manufacturers, it can be easier. It's a huge market. But having said that, we as the traders, when you look at the Kenyan economy, most of the people go for the cheaper goods. And so before we get there has to be a transition, and that transition that's where now we have to have that window of importation. And that is why as importers, we are looking at other market fronts, whereby can we get the same commodities at a cheaper rate or slightly higher rate than China? Because when you look at the labor laws in China, and even the costing of labor in China is cheaper than anywhere else in the world. When you look at the holistic picture, this is an avenue that we can be able to venture into, but I don't think the government right now has capacity. And where we are right now, truthfully, because we have to be very realistic, where we are, we don't have capacity to be able to fill in the 90 billion
So what are the quick wins? Because I know you had a meeting with the president at State House, the Small Scale Traders Association. What were some of the recommendations you're making? Because you talk about the cost of electricity being high, and yet KPLC recorded a 92% dip in profit.
You see, the profit of KPLC, and there's politics all around that. When you look at the local manufacturers, they are crying foul. Actually, people are closing shop in Kenya and going to places like Rwanda, any other place, because there are incentives which the other governments are put in place.
Incentives is one of the things you recommended.
Yes, incentives is one of the things that we could recommend. And one of the things which I would like to say, which the president actually has done for us, and it's a good thing. You remember he had an issue with the PVOC and also the COC. It was 20% of the gross, of your invoice. That means, like, for example, if you bring a container that is worth 6 million, then you have to part with about 1.2 million shillings in terms of paying to KEBS. It has gone down to 5%, which is a very good thing. Those incentives, they have to be put in place. Number two, the processes of clearing the goods. When you look at what was happening initially, there were so many government bodies which were there to vet the same goods, and it was not realistic corruption took the day, because you find that once you get a PVOC, which is a government document in China, and ideally those people are acting on behalf of KEBS, when you come here, that paper or that PVOC is null and void. You have to be taken again through what you call 100% verification, and KEBS officials again have to, to do that. And I think the president, what he did, he decided to do away with that. So if you get a PVOC, your goods come and they are clear. Number 3, we should have the president removed these other bodies, what you call the multi-agencies, a good number of them. Anti-counterfeit, anti-ACA, they were in the port, KEBS was there, then you have KRA was there, even you had the DCI there, and all those, it was a concussion of corruption.
Right.
And that is why we decided, why can't we have these processes becoming leaner and yet effective without compromising the quality of the goods which are coming into the country? Lastly, we told the president that we want to pay taxes, but can it be simplified, whereby we don't have those humongous and processes which we do not understand on payment of taxes.
Yeah.
So he said, why can't you simplify the payment of taxes? And that's why I'm seeing KRA going for a USSD approach to that, whereby from my kabambe and from your kabambe, you are able to pay your taxes.
Right.
Once you simplify that, you are going to increase what we call the tax base, whereby a good number of many people are going to be brought on board, and now make the taxation a little bit leaner, a little bit softer on people once we have numbers. So I think the government, so far it has done a lot, and it's good to commend the government what it has done. It has done a lot in terms of trying to implement that, even to come into the small medium entrepreneurs.
All right, here's the thing, Ken. 19 billion Kenyan shillings is what KQ earned in 2018 from Asia's market alone. 19 billion.
Right.
200,000 is the annual passengers. 200,000 is the annual passengers between Kenya and China annually. For already a struggling carrier, what does this mean? This coronavirus and how it has impacted the airlines and the traveling. What does this mean already for a struggling carrier such as KQ?
Well, in my view, it's a big hit to KQ, especially because they need the numbers. They need as many more people using the airline as possible. But as a business model, why would a hit like this affect a business so much? Because there are other routes in the world. So there are questions there as well, that why is it that if this route has a problem, then the business is falling? So again, we've got to look at KQ as a business itself and see whether the models that they put in place in terms of how they run their business are sound. Because many businesses are affected by different things, but not every time they're affected by those hits, they fall. Because there are different implications, not only business here in this instance. There are moral and health implications to continuing to have this line, this route to China. For now, even for the next 1 month, because we haven't seen any concrete efforts to contain the virus. So opening that line again, opens us to challenges. Yeah. But then we should look into KQ and see whether does it have a way through it can cushion itself, so that there's another route, maybe these other routes we have explored, like to the US or to Europe, that then they can use to cushion whatever we are not getting from this route. Yeah. So I don't think it's a zero-sum game, that if the virus is, that we have to open this route regardless of the health implications. It just points to a big gap in how KQ is doing its business, and something really has got to be done about it. Yeah. But I wanted to say something about the issue about the trading being hampered by the virus and how we can look into Africa or markets in Africa. I think that's where you can almost say it's a hopeless endeavor, because if you say we are trading with Uganda, where do they get their products? China. Where do most of them still get these products from this side? We can say that Rwanda has just begun some kidogo manufacturing of phones, which are very expensive still. You can ask around Nairobi how many people have that smartphone. So still, China is a big trading nation globally. And whatever happens in China will affect all the other economies, especially small and middle income economies like ours. Yeah. So to me, what we need to do as a country is to make trade and investment competitive,
Yeah, and that's what I was about to
Yes.
ask you, because from the international development perspective, and
Yes.
you're a specialist in
Yes.
that, what are the quick wins then? If you say that trading within Africa, and we have AFTA as well coming up,
Yeah.
is that a good idea?
It-
African Free Continental Trade Area?
You know
Do
what
you
it
see
does?
that working?
You know what it does? You simply open up the market, but for trading on what? People buy bags from Kampala to bring to sell here in Nairobi, but they're bags that have been shipped from China. They just passed through this port of ours and went to Uganda, and we think we are trading with Uganda as a big partner. No. So what we need to do is to make trading and investment and manufacturing competitive. You're talking about energy in Kenya. I went to a forum where Kenyan was talking about how it's producing more than the country can consume. But the previous night, the CEO of Kenyan slept at night without electricity, meaning we can produce, but the processes for distributing the electricity through Kenya Power is the problem. So those are some of the little things that we need to deal with to make our manufacturing more competitive. Yes.
Maybe we've talked about this number. Let me just draw you a bit to this. 2.9 trillion shillings. IATA says that this will be lost just in passenger numbers. Maybe KQ will fall victim to part of this. They issued a profit warning of about 25% end of last year, going into this year. So could we see a scenario where, same again, Kenya Power issued a profit warning of 25% but went up to 92%? So could we see maybe a widening gap when it comes to their losses?
Yes. And again, it still bounces back to the point I made earlier on. All this depends on the capability of the global architecture to contain the virus. If we don't, then the implications are going to be higher.
Yeah.
The Chinese economy, the worst case scenario is it's going to grow at 4.5%, while it was supposed to grow at 6.9%. That means it's impacting everyone. So including KQ and Kenya Power and every other thing that's connected to the Chinese economy. When it slumps, everyone does slump. And it's going to be that case we used to say if the US government coughs, everyone else sneezes. Right now, it's China. So whatever happens in China, it impacts everyone. And it depends on how vulnerable you are to the, to such hits like KQ is very vulnerable.
Okay, here's the thing, Sami.
Yes.
I'd love a comparison. Give me a comparison between, in terms of biashara with the small-scale traders, how business was for them when Ebola happened, and a virus that is closer home, DRC, as compared to what we are facing right now with coronavirus. Just give me how the difference, the comparison rather.
You see, Ebola didn't have an impact because you don't have that massive trade, as we are talking of, as it were. We're talking about the inter-Africa countries.
Yes.
And so Ebola didn't have really an impact in terms of the economy. Vis-a-vis what now we are talking about, the coronavirus. The coronavirus, the reason why it has that big impact is because China has created itself as a country, as a manufacturing hub. It has made its own labor laws and also labor very cheap. All the countries actually they have a shop in China. They have set a shop in China. And when you look at now where people are going at, they are going at Vietnam again to make it also easier for them to be able to do the manufacturing. So when you look at Ebola and coronavirus, those are very different scenarios. Let me just jump in and say, what we are supposed to do as the continent of Africa, and I've seen AU and plus other head of states coming together and thinking of how we can be able to increase our intertrade, Africa intertrade, and also so many forums have been set, is that we have to lower the energy cost, because that's what is eating up in the manufacturing industry. When the energy cost goes down, the production cost goes down. When the production cost goes down, as Africans, when you go everywhere, it's about the pricing, not basically the quality, although the quality is also very expensive. Is how much am I getting out of when I'm buying this glass? And when you look at that, you see that we have failed as Africa. Why? Because, like as my brother is saying here, when you look at Kenyan is producing more power, but you cannot be able to supply that power. So what is the disconnect between the production and the supply? So you find that there is corruption between the production and the supply, because how can you produce more, yet the consumption here is wanting? So you find that you have, blackouts and all those kind of things. So we as a country and we as Africa, we should arise towards that. Let me jump into something which I think he said, and you asked that question about KQ and how it's functioning. as small traders, we have deals with other airlines. And I think KQ should wake up and know that there are other airlines which are coming on board, which are giving us more incentives in terms even of the costing and the pricings and their value for our tickets. So you find that there are some, Emirates is in Nyamakima, they are coming with their agents, and we are getting actually more from what you are paying for. And so when you look at our local airlines, if they are not able to come down to us as small, medium traders and give us incentives in terms of the service provision, they are going to go down because number one, we look at the efficiency. Number two, we also look at the costing that we are getting, because you're not going to stop going to China. We are going to go to China, and many airlines are going to China. And Asian tigers are big market front, big market front. And so when you look at that, I think AQ is on its exit if something doesn't happen.
All right, we have to take a quick break. When we come back, we'll wind up. But I'd like to know from you, what are the traders doing to survive right now as we speak? That right after the break. We're taking a quick break here. Keep your views coming on 22422 at Trevor Mbij at Zinzi_K and at Faisal's Paragraph Twitter handle. That will be sampling in just a bit.
Oh my goodness.
Right, thank you for staying with Daybreak. We'll sample your views at the tail end of this conversation. We've had two conversations, one on banking on SACCOs, and now we're talking about the coronavirus impact. Faisal is still with us. He is trying to edit his Twitter handle. So now, Sami, the main concern is what are the small-scale traders doing now to survive? Are they closing shop? What's happening?
There's something that came up when we also met the president, and we saw that because of the taxation, the taxation burden in the small traders, people are getting goods from Uganda. And why are people getting goods from Uganda? Because Uganda has lowered its own, it has some incentives to the traders, and so a good number of a big stock is in Uganda right now, whereby people, they take containers. When they dock in Mombasa, they go on transit to Uganda. So we have a very huge stock in Uganda, and that's where now the traders are getting goods from Uganda to Kenya. So now if that stock runs dry, we don't have anything to sell. And what will happen is people are going to close shop. So we are getting goods from Uganda in terms of cosmetics, in terms of bags, in terms of any other mobile phones or mobile phone accessories. They're in Uganda. Why? Because even some of the traders have set huge shops and huge go-downs in Uganda, because it's easier for you to trade in Uganda. And that is why we even tell the government, why can't we have more incentives in small, medium entrepreneurs, whereby instead of declaring our goods on transit to Uganda, then we bring them back again to this country, which is a huge loss of revenue in the Kenyan economy. And so that's how that's what we are doing to survive.
How long do you see this stock lasting in Uganda?
Trevor, we are huge consumers of Ugandan, of Chinese products. We are huge consumers, especially the cosmetics. I don't know what the ladies are going to do in terms of kujipondoa, because because we are huge consumers.
On behalf of the female
community. Because we are huge consumers of the cosmetic industry, and I think that's the first going to be hit. Number two, the mobile phone accessories, because we keep on changing our covers, screens and everything. He has a kabambe. You keep on changing our screens and everything. So it's going to be huge. And if it goes for the next 3 months, the consumption that we're having, the appetite that we have for such products in Kenya, we are going to be selling nothing.
Okay. Ken.
Yes.
Oil. OPEC itself, the kingpins, Russia and Saudi, cannot even agree how they're going to work around the demand for oil given the coronavirus. OPEC is sort of like the oil body that regulates the prices. Here's the thing, at the end of the day, that oil price will trickle down to the price of bread.
Yeah.
What should the government be doing to make sure that when that happens, when oil prices go up, depending on what the OPEC kingpins decide, the Russians and Saudis, that back here in Kenya, there's already a cushion that has been made. We all know how oil is important and how it affects even the price of bread.
Now, if you look at from January 20th to around 15th of February, the price of oil has dipped by about 17%. And it could continue.
Right.
Because China is by far the greatest consumer of crude oil in the world. So when the demand for oil from China goes down, it's going to affect the market. And in this instance, I argue the opposite.
Okay.
That it could lead to a dip in oil prices that could actually be advantageous to our economy.
Okay.
Because you know, in our economy, when the price of oil goes up, matatu goes up, the transporting lorries go up, a lot of things do that. So this is one of the instances where what we are talking about can impact our economy in a positive way.
Right.
However, what I know with the major oil producers, they will sit somewhere and organize themselves to stabilize the price so that it didn't drop very low. Maybe if we had begun to sell oil like what we sold the other time with the EOPS, then it would have impacted our revenues. The only thing it would do is for other African countries like Ghana and Nigeria that sell crude, and therefore it's going to be impacting their government revenues if it continues to spiral down.
Faisal, isn't as you're giving us the last question, you just said you got an alert on a coronavirus in Brazil?
Yes, actually, by the beginning of this conversation, we had said that some of the areas that are not affected include the southern hemisphere of the Americas.
But that's not the case right now. Here's the thing. I'm also seeing this is an alert that has just come in. Tim Cook himself, the CEO of Apple, dodges coronavirus questions.
Yeah, because as we've said, Trevor's iPhone will take longer to get. So those are some of the questions that he could actually be regarding to. So just to give you a perspective, the U.S. government actually signed through, the U.S. Fed signed through and gave the Department of Health $2.5 billion to try and combat coronavirus. But in Kenya, we've had an issue just dishing out 1.8 billion shillings to the Ministry of Health to set up a quarantine facility in Mbagathi Hospital, which could have catered for the 239
that have been told to self-quarantine themselves.
Self-quarantine. So that actually shows you that without the 1.8 billion shillings, the more tourists and business people coming from China into Kenya, the more they'll be asked to actually self-quarantine themselves.
For 14 days.
Right.
How practical that is.
Well, you can almost see the gap. And that's why that first question was very relevant in terms of the government response and proactiveness to dealing with the health implications, but also the economic implications. Because the moment we get an actual case of coronavirus in Kenya, that's when you realize how we are unprepared and vulnerable, economy-wise, but also public health-wise.
All right, we have to leave it there. Kenneth Okwara is an international trade development specialist and the director at ASIPIS, which is Africa Center for People, Institutions and Society. And Sami Karanja is the CEO of Small Scale Traders Association. He's saying that they'll run out of goods if this situation is not contained soon. That does it for Daybreak, this session for the discussion.